young lady. If you're going to stay out of bed, you put your robe on.
Gramps, why can't we go to the Mardi Gras?
Well, because you're a little too young, Julie. And I'm a little too... Well, your Gramps has been to his share of them, Julie.
I haven't.
Well, your turn will come. In the meantime, shall we watch from the balcony?
Moms won't care. Gramps, why don't they have a Mardi Gras all the time?
Well, because people can't spend all their time at play, Julie. Life has a serious side, too. People must work, raise families, and always be an active part of this nation. They must earn their time for play. Well, there's your Mardi Gras, Julie. Mighty gay and colorful, isn't it? But it wasn't always like this. And it wasn't all accomplished overnight, either. I remember my father telling me of his first Mardi Gras. Months before, he had decided to leave his home in Omaha, come to New Orleans, and set himself up in the furniture business. The first part of his trip was made by stagecoach. By 2 stagecoaches. He was lucky to be able to walk away from that one. The jolting miles he covered in that second coach made him mighty thankful to see the first of the riverboats that were to take him on the rest of his trip. Riverboats in those days were the last word in modern travel. And the folks of my father's time came from all over the country, not only to see the Mardi Gras, but to be able to go home and boast that they had traveled on the most modern means of transportation man would ever be able to invent. Well, when your great-grandfather finally arrived in New Orleans, he was looking at the city that was our country's 4th in size, and right then, first in amount of trouble. In 1853, the words yellow fever were enough to make the bravest man want to run. And your great-grandfather didn't feel he even qualified in the first 10. But he took time to look around him, and he was glad he had. Not one soul was running. Instead, men and women were coming in from all over the countryside to help stop the epidemic. My father learned a lesson then that he was going to remember all of his life. The power of a united effort made by a determined group of people. After the epidemic was curbed, this town started giving some thought to their Mardi Gras. They certainly had earned themselves some relaxation and pleasure. And so your great-grandfather's first Mardi Gras was to mean more to him than just a noisy revel. As he peered under the gay masks and grotesque heads of the revelers, he recognized the same faces he had seen only a few short weeks before, masked with grim determination. And his enjoyment was doubled as he remembered that he, too, had had his part in making this Mardi Gras possible. Some of the gay, colorful groups of people he met that first night were to become his good friends and business associates for the rest of his life. The pattern of his life in New Orleans had begun and ran a smooth, unhurried pace until... Well, of course, your great-grandfather was right in the middle of that. And during those 4 long and terrible war years, his memories of the past and his hopes for the future were to be his only comfort. I'll never forget the sorrow in his voice as he told me of fighting in one of the first battles in which brother fought brother and father fought son. There were no parties, no Mardi Gras then, Julie. A nation that can only settle its disputes by fighting loses all of its rights to pleasure. He told me, too, of seeing the first meeting between 2 ironclad battleships, the Monitor and the Merrimac. That was in Virginia in 1862. For over 3 hours, both ships pounded away at each other. But when it was over and done, as in most fights, neither had won. War of any kind, and regardless of the outcome, is a sordid, disheartening business, Julie. And after the Civil War, it took our Mardi Gras a long time to recapture the fun and gaiety they once had. By that time, I was old enough to sit up and take notice. The first Mardi Gras I remember now was the one in which I was allowed to help with the floats. I was mighty proud of that assignment because, as you know, the floats are seen by very few people up to the time they enter the parade. Oh, I have lots of reasons to remember that Mardi Gras. It was then that I first met your grandmother. And as the two of us, together with our party, wandered through the crowded streets, we heard the wail of an instrument playing some notes that were soon to become a part of our America, the blues. That wasn't the only form of music that came out of our Mardi Gras either. Some years later, your grandmother and I were swept into a whirlpool of revelers who were parading to the stirring rhythms of a small street band. The music we marched to then was later called Dixieland. And you know there have been some mighty famous Dixieland bands since. Well, it wasn't long after that Mardi Gras that the drainage of our swampland seemed like the most important thing we could do to entitle us to our yearly carnival. My, we certainly earned our Mardi Gras in those years. And you know, Julie, it seemed to me, as it had to my father, that the more we had accomplished during the year, the more enjoyment we got out of our Mardi. In 1915, we caught the full force of a tropical hurricane. Instead of the terrible loss of life that usually comes from such a disaster, we had reason to be thankful. Because of our drainage system, not one life was lost. People have to earn their Mardi Gras today, Julie, just as I did in my time, and my father did in his. Say, you hear what that band is playing? Sounds sort of familiar, doesn't it? Well, I guess we were more up to date in my day than people think. Of course, it's only been since 1934 that the children have had floats, like the one you rode on last Saturday. But the rest of the Mardi Gras today is very much the same as the Mardi Gras were that my father saw in his time. Each year, the chosen king of the carnival has been paying tribute to his queen. And for almost 100 years now, he's been saluting as he passes a royal reviewing stand and later escorting her to the ball that was named in his honor. Outside, thousands of masks hide the faces of people who, on this day especially, know that they have much to be thankful for. People who, as they happily rub shoulders and elbows with each other, all are vividly acting out the meaning of the words, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, that's enough Mardi Gras for tonight, Julie. Now, back to bed you go.
Someday I'll be out there myself, won't I? Why, someday I might even be the queen of the Mardi Gras.
Of course, Julie. Someday you may. You'll share the fun with those people out there, and you'll share their work, too. Our country wouldn't amount to much if it was all play and no work. Fun is just a reward for the more serious things we accomplish. And what you accomplish when you're older depends on yourself. You'll find opportunities for most anything you set your heart and mind on. That's because you're living in a land of opportunity.